Thank you for joining us today. I'm Cherita Logan, the host for the hour, and today we're going to have a conversation with Mr. Curlee Reed Sr. to talk about some of the things that was going on in our past back in the era of 1967 and a little bit before and a little bit after. Good evening, Curlee.
Well, I just want to say I just thank you so very much for having me here. Thank you.
Well, indeed, there were some exciting times going on back in the day. And there was a meaning to being an African American, for being black. There was a movement and a culture where families stuck together and were working together. On the west side of Chicago, you would find different kind of black love being expressed. You had some real staples in the community. The Garfield Park, the Conservatory, the Flower House, Marshall High School, Faraday, Lee Ferguson School. You had some things going on over on 16th Street, and you had where King had moved to the west side to over on Holman, and then over on Hamlin, where he owned a building there, a 3-story building, where he moved to because the landlords had a rodent-infested apartments that they were renting out, and he wanted to get that taken care of. He wanted to bring attention to it. He himself was doing great advocacy work, and which is what brings us here today, is to talk about the advocacy and the outreach and the organization and organizations that existed that time in that era. And so I'd like to take you back to that and kind of open up and have you kind of describe what was going on, what were the feelings during that time when King came to Chicago. Let's start there.
It was very exciting. Those years was something that, in fact, I have good dreams about. And you're right. For some reason, during those times, black men were truly black men. I come up under some black men. I said, Lord, thank you that you hooked me up with these men, because they took care of you. They trained you in your thoughts, what to think, how to think. One of the gentlemen who was my close friend, Frederick Douglass Andrews, he taught me a whole lot how to help people. He said, it ain't all about the money, Curlee. Do you believe in what you're doing? And if you believe in what you're doing a great job. I said, my brother, okay, cool. But that was that type of year.
So you mentioned Doug Andrews, and what was Doug Andrews, what was his colloquial name, his nickname?
Doug.
Doug.
And he was the director of the Garfield organization. It was organization Garfield. We were located right there on Monroe and Pulaski, right across from when Gold Blast was Gold Blast. And I just got a lot of good memories. I remember I would walk from Pulaski down to Western, because I go down there to see my other brothers down there, the Black Panthers. Because everybody on the west side was just tight. We really didn't do no argument. We just come down and say, hey, guys, what y'all up to today? They said, well, Curlee, we're going to do woo-woo. I said, okay. And stuff that I didn't need to know nothing about, everybody would tell me, we'll see you later on, Curlee. I said, well, I appreciate y'all.
And so you mentioned the different organized organizations. What were some of those? You named two, Doug, Garfield,
right,
Black
Garfield,
Panthers.
The Black Panthers, Chester Robinson there, off of Roosevelt and Ashland.
Wow.
Yeah, I went all the way back with Thurston and Chester Robinson, all those wonderful men. And like I said, where I went, somebody would say, you got that Curlee Reed over here from Garfield. They say, open the door, let him in.
And so, during that time, you also had Operation Bread Basket?
Right, before it became Push. And Doug and the Honorable Jesse Jackson, they were good friends. Doug would take us out south. We would sit there. And by the way, it makes me remember the peeps. I was locked up for a little while, you know, in one of those things they call jails. And I learned a lot while I was there. One thing I learned most of all, I didn't want to go back no more.
Okay.
I learned that piece there, and I would always say, I'll never land in my cell, I'll talk to God. I said, God, if I have to come back, let me come back as the new director of Cook County Jail.
All right now.
Because other than that, it wasn't nothing else happening.
That's right. That's right.
The flavor of the rise, it wasn't really riding to us. I felt like I was fighting for something. I really did. I felt like, I said, man, this is something real here. It wasn't about me being out there jumping up and down for nothing. I felt grateful. I felt good to have an opportunity to fight for change. And that's really the thing, to be fighting for change. Lord have mercy. I would be around people, they say, boy, you really love this. I really do. But I love politics. I think politics is one of the greatest things in the whole world. People hit me and say, how come? I say, because people wouldn't be nowhere without politics.
Well, it governs everything that you do.
Thank you.
Everything that you can do, everything
That's
that you
right.
don't do, and everything that you want to do. We have to operate by policies,
That's right.
by the laws, which becomes the policy, which dictate the programs, which dictate the actions. And that's how we get our safety net activities for those who are needed. And so prior to the riot period, what was going on in the community?
The community was getting ready for change. You could feel it in the air. When I walked up and down Madison Street, I was always felt very hurt that we didn't have all the things that other communities had. I could look around and see things, and I'm like, why do we not have what they have on the north side? Why do we not have what they have out in Chatham? I would cry because I felt bad. And I said, God, there's got to be something that I can personally do to help make some changes over here. We used to do a lot of marching. You know, it was a lot of marching. You marched all the time because there was something that needed marching on. I look at the stores now. I look at the stores now on Madison Street. There's nothing there. There's no shopping for people. We all, as black people, go to other people's neighborhoods and shop. So that tells me something. We don't have it. We need it. I done heard a lot of people in politics promise everything from the top of the world to the bottom of the world. But somehow or another, that world does not involve the west side of Chicago. That makes me cry a little bit.
That's interesting because we still have a lot of blightedness from that time. We have a lot of vacant lots. Our schools are still behind the other schools. What role did the churches play? Were the churches playing a role? Were they working with the community? What was that like?
Well, you know, the churches was always the backbone of the community. They was always right there with you. The one thing about the churches, they kept us unified. They really did. Some ministers would come over there because we got ready to act crazy doing something. And black ministers show up and say, now, boy, you know that ain't what you're supposed to be doing. And we would sit there and listen to them because it was an honor for us to listen to them. You know, we understood honor. At a young age, me being hooked up with the men that I was hooked up with, they believed in honor. So I believed in honor too. And when I seen certain people come by, I gave them the respect that was due them as ministers. I ain't try to get out there on the goofy. You know, I said, no, the minister said, blase we. He ain't got to be my minister, but the minister said. They said, I hear you, Curlee.
So back in that time, you listened to the ministers, you gave them a high level of respect. What about the seniors?
Well, the seniors was next to the ministers. That's all. Because we went to all the senior citizens buildings on the west side. Because I did campaigning. I worked for Ed Smith as a volunteer for numerous of years when he was alderman. And we would go to all the different senior citizen buildings. One thing that I understood about politics, it wasn't the person that was running that people voted for. They voted for the volunteer workers that they seen that came to the door and talk to them. Huh? When I knocked on the door, I said, hey, they said, here come that Curlee again. But the one thing, when they said that, that was with respect. Because they said, hey, man, what's happening? I said, listen, I don't care if you vote for the person I'm with or not. Please come out and just vote. They said, my man, by you not pushing us, we'll come on out. Well, that's what we'll do. That's how we've been brought up.
So we were teaching and preaching voting. We were respecting ministers. We were respecting our senior citizens. We'd walk them across the street or stop. You didn't smoke cigarettes in front of the church. You didn't use profanity in front of the churches. And what about the women and the children when it came to violence? Women and children were excluded.
Well, you have to remember those years was different than the years now.
Let's talk about those years.
Those years, it was plenty of respect for women. It was plenty of respect for children. There were times that I was out there and did things that I shouldn't have done. But I learned women were off limits. If I was mad with somebody, I couldn't do nothing to them women. And I better not do nothing around them children, because the people that I was with would come and check me. Say, man, you know you can't do that. So they was always number one. Women and children was number one in the community, because without them wasn't no community.
How do you think that got, or do you think it got lost, or how do you think it got lost?
Well, what happened, we lost base with our spiritual connection. Remember, a lot of our grandparents died out. Our great uncles, great aunties, all of them who taught us a certain level of respect and how to give respect, they died. Then our children started having children so young that they didn't have they couldn't show no guidance because they were still kids. So it left when the grandparents and uncles and great aunts, all of them passed away. And there was nobody to carry on the legacy of teaching the children how to act and how to behave.
So when they taught you, they could also teach you with a switch if you didn't do right. And so now if you teach them with a switch, they're called DCFS.
Oh, yeah. You know, you get a butt whipping in a minute. I better not get no butt whipping by nobody else down the street, because now I got to go home. I don't want to tell mama that Miss So-and-so whooped me. She didn't even ask me why. She said, boy, I got something for you. Oh, Lord, she got something for me too. But, but anyway, but that's how that was.
And was that the village raising a child?
That's exactly what that was. That's exactly what that was. We traveled the city. We knew people south side, west side. We traveled the city. So we had a good time, and there were scary times out there. There were things out there that you don't want to elaborate on. They were just scary times.
You think those were far more fearful than now?
It was a different type of scary. Now is a disrespect and a disconnect between our young folks, and all of them are not bad. They're not trying to do things that's goofy. A lot of them just want something to do. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know, and we need to listen to them, first of all. We as grown-ups, we always want to go in there and tell the young folks what to do and how to do it. And hold it, wait a minute. What do you want to do? How do you want us to treat you? And get some feedback from them young folk. We need to get young folks together, help them raise money, and buy up all the vacant stoves up there on Madison, and put something in there, and then put those same young folks in there to run them stores.
I agree 100% with you. Connect everyday economics with education.
That's true.
And that gives them something to do. It gives them value. You have to have commerce. You have to have money to survive. That's right. You just have to have it. There's no way to get around it. Give them access once you give them the education, but also give them access once they get the education so that they can take care of themselves and take care of their parents. Now let's fast forward backwards again, back to the 1967 era. King had the dream. He had come to the West Side, got an apartment, moved into a home, visited several spaces, several churches on the West Side of Chicago, as well as the South and the downtown at the park for the big rallies. But so let's talk about the temperature. You mentioned riots early. Let's talk about the temperature. What was going on in that era that got us over to the riots?
Well, we've seen the disrespect that was coming, not just black folk, from different races concerning Dr. King. It upset us how they wanted to treat this man. And I say to myself, if y'all treat a person of peace this way, what would you do to me? And that's that made the temperature do some changing. Because I remember looking at the pictures and the movies about Dr. King, they march, and I see people just throw things at him and curse him and do. I said, well, what's going on? I felt I needed to do something. So we did a different type of organizing.
Mm-hmm.
Doug was a person that was connected with a lot of business people.
Mm-hmm.
He brought the first Burger King to the west side of Chicago.
All right.
And put it up on Koloff in Madison.
Mm-hmm.
He even gave some of them Burger Kings there. Burger King put him in charge of to other leaders in the city.
Okay.
You know, so it was all about economics. He would teach us that and say, man, y'all know, if it ain't no money, ain't nothing happening.
Mm-hmm.
So we watched him and how he did things, and we learned from him also. He was the kind of leader that listened to us too. He didn't just walk around and say, hey, hey, hey. He listened. Hey, Curlee, how you feel about so-and-so, so-and-so? I said, okay, boss, this is how I feel about it. You know, he said, all right then, man, no problem.
So leading up to the time when King was assassinated, and the temperature of what was going on in Chicago, let's talk about those days. The day that it happened, I remember the day that it happened. I was at Faraday School. I was attending Faraday Elementary School, which is still there, across the street from Marshall High School on Kedzie. And I remember the teacher coming into the room and asked for all of the light-skinned children to get up. And that's just how they said it. We needed all the light-skinned children to get up and come into the hallway. And so I felt it was two of us in that classroom, and we felt like we had done something wrong with the energy that the teacher had. We came into the hallway and they said, well, we need all of you all to run home, to go home. You're going to get out early. Need you to run and do not stop. Well, that was kind of panicky for a young child. And I had a cousin, he was lighter than I was. And we ran home, and right after that I could remember the bell for all the other kids to come behind us. And so luckily we only lived just a block or two away from the school. We lived at Holman and Monroe in 3400 block. And where there was right on Madison was a big furniture store. I almost remember the name of that furniture store. Black guy owned it. And then you had the grocery store right on the alley. And you had all other kind of stores on Madison Street. You had the cleaners on the corner on Madison and Holman, and a lot of stores in the 3300 block of Madison, where the King Apartment Plaza sits now. Mm-hmm. You had a McDonald's down on Kedzie, just stores and shopping centers, not owned by blacks, however. But I remember that day, and I remember later on that evening smelling the smoke and seeing the fires and being told to stay in the house. And so tell me, what do you remember about when you all got the news?
What you remember, that part. But I remember when kids walked out of high schools, marching down Madison Street, black children meeting up from different schools, marching over to Austin High School to get the children out of Austin. Y'all come on out of there. We ain't got to deal with that. And, now that was beautiful to me. I looked up and seen all my wonderful teenagers walking down Madison. They wasn't rowdy. They wasn't clowning, making no noise. They were just marching. Yeah, that was something that touched my heart, you know. But I know that piece that you're talking about the children leaving, the protection was on lighter skinned children. Because the darker you were, you had some protection on you.
Right.
You know. So we followed the children. From Garfield Organization, Doug Andrews got us say, y'all meet them at Austin, make sure everything is okay. Protect who y'all can protect over there at Austin. So that's what we did. We got in front of the crowd, went to Austin High School, and we told the principals in there, we're not here to bother anybody. We just want to make sure everybody get out of here right. They said, no problem. And we got them out of there. Really wasn't any violence over there. We got them out.
Were you all organized with the Black Panthers at that time?
All of us was unified.
Okay.
Yeah. Wasn't no black organization on the west side that was not connected to each other.
Wow, that was powerful.
Yeah, we were connected. Wasn't no problem there. Doug was one of the leaders, would tell all other leaders, come on, y'all.
And were there any women
Yeah.
in the movement of that time? So let's talk about some of them before we actually talk about the actual beginning of the fires.
Well, you had Miss Jefferson. You had
So
Ma Henry.
would that be Nancy Jefferson?
Yeah, Nancy. You had Ma Henry. It's so many, because we had so many. That's what gave us strength as black men. Them women come into the organization, and they will come in anybody's organization. What y'all doing up in here? We said, well, just come on in. You know, they gave us special strength because they would pray for us, make sure that we did things correctly. And we took them to different places too. We loved taking all them senior women to different locations and things, and they had a wonderful time. It is so many names of black women that was in this piece that I cannot name them all. It was just many of them.
Okay. And so what was their role?
Their role was really backing up men. And that's what they did. They backed us up. When the riots began, I was arrested April 6th or April 7th, 1968. Right after King passed away. And our organization was on Keel and Madison. And the FBI came in with a handful of warrants looking for certain black men, and I was on that list. And the black women in there would not let them hurt any of us. They didn't know these black women were karate experts. These young black girls, we had to tell them, y'all cool out. They just gonna lock us up. We'll be back. Because they got really upset about that. And they locked us up for a long while, too long.
And why were they looking for you guys?
Well, we don't want to go there, but
Okay.
but they was accusing us of different things.
Okay. All right.
That doesn't mean that we did it or had anything to do with that, but because by us being who we were, caused them to put an indictment on us, saying that we did certain things.
Okay. Was Mr. Andrews part of the group that was arrested?
Who?
Doug Andrews, was he part of that group that was arrested?
He and I was in the same cell.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I was in a cell with my leader. And they had us on the west side. They had got some of the other brothers from the south side saying that we were engaging in certain type of things and behavior that was not complimentary to the United States of America. We didn't know what they were talking about. But that's what we were, and we were caught up in there. And then God sent us lawyers like Mr. Pension, R. Eugene Pension. He came in there, but even before I get to Mr. Pension, Sammy Davis Jr., Eartha Kitt came to town to raise money to get us out of jail.
All right now, Eartha Kitt, Sammy Davis
and
Jr.
Sammy Davis Jr. came to town because Doug Andrew was hooked up with all of them. They liked Doug. Doug
Okay.
had the kind of personality, not only made him a good leader, but it made him a good person to be around. So Eartha would invite him down to our house. Sam invited him down in California to stay with him for a few days. So we had a lot of people. But that was through the connection of a Doug. And throughout the whole West Side, there was many Dougs who were doing organization and organizing.
So did that stop you all once you got out? Did that stop you from organizing and doing the things that it took to keep our community going?
We spent off. A lot of us went doing different things. I went straight into politics. I like me some politics, boy. I said, y'all don't know where change began. If change started with being political. So I went into politics, and my first volunteer thing was with Ed Smith.
Okay. So back when the fires took place, speaking of politics, Mayor Daley was Mayor Daley.
The dad.
The dad was the mayor at that time.
Right.
And so what was it like on the streets, and what was your feeling when you saw the military out with the guns, with the knives at the end of them, and there was an order, shoot to kill?
It was frightening. It was scary. It was for real.
It definitely was for real.
It was for real. And that's what you looked around there, you said, oh my God, these folks really trying to do something to us. And that's where my thoughts was at. You know, they were trying, I remember being out there and they were just shooting all around my head, just shooting, people shooting. I didn't know which way to go.
Yeah, it was a lot of shooting, a lot of looting. For me, I had experienced the first night that the fires took place, some kind of way, my siblings and some of my cousins, we went outside, and remember we were on Monroe, and the fires were taking place on Madison, and so we were able to come through the alley right next to the big apartment building that we lived in, come through the alley. And when we stepped on Madison at that alley, I think it was St. Louis.
Well, St. Louis, yeah.
St. Louis, looked up, and who did I walk into but other than my father, who was 6 feet tall. And when he whooped you, he'd hold you in the air. All I could see is my legs dangling in the air. Listen, if I did not have the reaction of a person having a heart attack, we knew we were dead.
Well, and that's what parents did.
Yes, yes. And so he said, go home now, and do not leave out that house anymore. Oh my God, let me tell you, I was more afraid of him than I were those soldiers with those knives. It was that I remember of being one of the most times of my life of being afraid. I also remember some of my clothes was in the cleaners on Holman and Madison on the west side of the street. And my little dress got burned up. It was the best little dress I had, my little sailor-looking dress. And I remember that. I remember looking at Coretta King's face and feeling her pain, watching the funeral on television, and what that meant for me. I could not wait to get of age. You talk about politics. I could not wait to get of age to cast my vote, to get involved, to start to fight for my fight for freedom, for an oppressed people, for African Americans, for blacks.
I do understand that. I was right there. When they locked all of us up, they locked up quite a few people on the west side. They locked up about 100 and some men and women and boiled it down to the 7 they wanted. And I was one of those 7 that they say they wanted. I remember we had to get we got out of jail, and we had big companies to get us out of jail because they knew Doug. Miners and Mufflers president put up a lot of money to get us out, to get one of us out. Montgomery, they put up money to get another one of us out.
Attorney Montgomery Wards.
Okay. I don't know if you remember Lucy Montgomery. She used to be around all of us. So them all white people ain't bad, and all blacks are not necessarily divine.
All they can be.
Right. So we had a lot of people working on our behalf to help us get up out of there. I think I was the last one to come out of jail. Me and Andrew Brown was the last two to get out. We got Doug out first.
Got your leader out first.
Yeah, he had to get out to watch the money because people were saying they was raising money for us, but they were stealing the money. Mm-hmm. So we said, Doug, you go on and get out. He said, man, I'll be back to get y'all. We said, you know where we at. You know, you sitting up in 26 in California. You know where we at. So I had to explain to my mama, don't get upset with Doug because he's out. I'd rather for him to be out than to be in here with me. Because I know with him out, I have an opportunity to get out.
SNCC, I was trying to think of that organization. SCLC.
Right, but they was originally, did they originally come out of Georgia or Alabama?
Yeah, I don't think they
were in Chicago.
Right, but I think they didn't they have an office over on 16th Street?
I don't remember them.
Oh, you know what? Maybe I'm thinking about, how can I forget his name? Russ Meeks. Maybe I'm thinking about him on 16th Street.
Congressman Rush?
No, Russ Meeks.
Oh, Mr. Meeks.
Yeah.
The karate man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, who would train everybody in karate?
Yes.
Mr. Meeks.
Yes. Maybe I'm thinking about him when I think about 16th Street.
That's who was over there.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
So we came out it unscathed. Mm-hmm. Some people was hurt. Mm-hmm. And then we had other folks out there just for their own selfish gains. Mm-hmm.
You talk about during the time of the riots.
During the riot, the 6-day riot, when the National Guards was on Pulaski and Madison. Mm-hmm. Right there. But I didn't even know that at the time because I'm looking at the National Guard, but I don't know that their colonel who was out there going to end up being one of my lawyers that pension went and hired.
All right.
We had 7 lawyers sitting at the table. I remember the lawyers asked for a bond here before I even know who everybody was. Sammy Davis Jr., when he came to town, he went and got pension for us. Mm-hmm. Well, pension, first time I seen the Honorable R. Eugene Pension, he walked in the jailhouse and looked at all of us. He said, them folks want to try to lock y'all up. I said, who are you? He said, I'm your lawyer. I said, no, you're not. Because I ain't like what he said, you know. And then Doug said, give him an opportunity. And he talked to us, and I found out the man was a great part of history, R. Eugene Pension.
Oh, yes. Did he come in with his cowboy hat on?
Always.
Oh, he had his cowboy, did he have his boots on?
Always. The man was so pretty, we knew, but he was smart. Oh. And all the lawyers sitting at the table, when they introduced him in court, the judges knew each one of them. Mm-hmm. We had James Montgomery, who used to work for the city. Mm-hmm. We had Crowley. Mm-hmm. Lord, we had my lawyer, I forget his name at the time. And they introduced him, and the judge asked him, say, well, what were you doing during the riot? He said, I was leading the National Guards. He said, well, where were you stationed? He said, Pulaski and Madison. The judge said, what's your position? He said, I'm a colonel. Mm-hmm. When the people tried to say that we did certain things up there on Madison, he the one got up there and said, that ain't true. They lying on them men.
All right.
Because we were there. How could they do it? I almost fell out of my chair. I said, oh my God, thank you. That's how God works. Mm-hmm. He put all us together like that. Then Jesse came to the jail and got us out. The last 2 remaining, they broadcasted on WVON. Mm-hmm. I'm in Cook County Jail, in my cell, and I hear the other people hollering in the jail, hey, Curlee, you getting ready to go home? I said, huh? They said, we just heard it on WVON that Jesse on his way to get you.
All right now. Bring chills.
Then we come on up, we come up out of there. And life was already prepared for me then, at that point, through what I had been through, that I just walked straight into the political arena and started working for people.
So, to get change in our community, one way was respect, advocacy, organization, working together, uh, being humble, listening to your leaders that were leading, respecting women and children, particularly if there was a conflict, that the families, you did not bring harm to women and children or seniors. Respect your church, listen to your spiritual, one was having spiritual guidance, spirit in you, but spiritual guidance, listen to the spiritual leaders. And that was part of the formula for the village, and discipline for the children. Granny, grandma had their switch on lock, and dads had the belts on lock. And that was part of the formula. And you mentioned school, which is a big piece, and you mentioned how intelligent, how smart Judge Pincham was. And Attorney Montgomery still is. So school, and you mentioned you all went to the school to get the children out of the school to march, peacefully march. That education is a big role to the formula of being successful. And so those things are the things that help keep our community together, help keep our community growing under the suppressive things that one had to deal with.
You are absolutely correct. I agree with you. There's one person that I want to mention, don't want to forget them. Congressman Danny K. Davis, with his very humble self. He has been in my life since I was about 17. I'm 73 now.
All right now.
I remember when he was in the medical field. He used to work with my grandmother-in-law, Ma Henry. That's how I met him. And I always liked him because when he advised us on something, he always did it in an educational way. When he spoke to, he's one of the most fluent black men I know. My son looked at him when we got the awards that time. My son said, "He's magnificent, Dad." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Because he's a historian. He knows about each and every one of y'all. And when he tell your life story, people say, huh?"
Yes, he could tell it in such a way.
Oh, yeah.
If you didn't have king or queen status before, you had it after he qualified you.
Yeah.
Yes, he can qualify you. Yes, he can.
He would say, "Let me tell you, every time you all called the name, and somebody walked up there to get our certificate in certain classes."
You're talking about at our educators award, scholarship and award ceremony, and where we recognize those who had an influence on children and who have made an impact in that particular year you're talking about. You were one of our recipients.
That's it. And he would say, "Let me tell you who so-and-so really is. Y'all think y'all know him." And at my table, he talked about some things my children didn't even know. And I had a couple of my friends there, a couple of judges, I'm talking about county judges, sitting at my table because they came to bag me up. And they would say, "We didn't know that, Curlee." I say, "Well, the congressman knows."
Yes.
That was a good part of our life.
Now you mentioned how old. You said 17. How old were you when you all were locked up?
I had to be about 18, 19.
And so that was a kind of defining moment, but also a very scary moment, because had not the Lord directed Doug to the help, you all could have still been incarcerated today.
Or dead.
Or dead.
Or dead.
Or dead.
We had the kind of leader who truly led. He wasn't talking about himself. He didn't do that. He said, "Y'all, just listen sometime." And we would sit down and just listen. Me and Andrew Brown said that. Andrew said, Doug say, "Listen," right? We sat down and we listened. And it made a lot of sense. We got mad with him about certain things, and we would say, he don't know what he's talking about. But it turned out to be fact. We said, Lord, that man told us this would happen. And by us not doing certain things and listening to him, we didn't go to the penitentiary.
All right now.
We did not go. And we would say, thank you.
You know, and talking about listening, music plays a major role on the shaping of the brain. So what kind of music, what kind of message was coming out of the music? And you mentioned Eartha Kitt and Sammy Davis Jr., but what were some of the other influences in terms of artists, the music, and what was the messaging?
The Impressions. They wrote some good music. I mean, the lyrics were just great when you listen to them. And the music was with the Temptations. So we had a lot of different love coming up out of music. One of violence type of scenario. People were singing about love and how do you keep your heart together, all of those things. And that's what we was listening to. Because you got to remember, we didn't have a lot of rap.
James Brown, Say It Loud, I'm Racking 'em Proud.
Oh, Lord, have mercy.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
made me want to get up and do the jig.
Yeah, and Marvin Gaye, What's Going On?
What's going on?
Family Reunion.
Yes.
The Isley Brothers.
All of those wonderful folk.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That's the kind of music I grew up on. And besides listening to jazz, Herb Kent.
Yes, Herb Kent. Yes, yes.
Just a lot of, there's so many, I can't
Miles
even think
Davis.
about it. Yes.
Oh my God, Oscar Brown. Yeah, so that was another
That was the
thing.
era. And if by mentioning that, you can see that there was a lot of love going around there. I don't remember people singing about hate. I don't remember any of that. I didn't see people writing on churches, no matter what the religious background of their church was. I didn't see that. I didn't see things that I see now.
Hate was not the order of the day.
Sure was.
Love was the order
Yes.
of the day. We were coming from the suppression of the 30s and 40s and 50s, and the 60s was full of dreams and promises and love.
That's right.
For each other,
That's right.
for your neighbor. I remember some of the stories my mom would tell, how if they had some meat, they would cook the meat and send the meat, take the meat out the beans and send it to the next neighbor, for that neighbor to use that meat. And they passed that meat along until there was no more meat to be passed along. How they would share shoes. If you didn't have shoes and you had to go to school, well, I stay home and you use the shoes to walk to school, because they had to walk miles to school. And education was really, really important. Family was important.
Yes.
Yeah, family was important. And so from that era, what do you think are some of the major, or a major point that kind of shaped you as you began to go into politics to make the decisions that you made?
First of all, it showed me how to give the next person an opportunity to share their thoughts. And I didn't have to speak every time I heard something. That was something I had to get used to, because I love talking. So I had to learn how to sit and be mindful about what somebody else was saying, although it may be something that went against my nerve, but I had to understand, hold, wait a minute. Everybody's not thinking the same way that Curlee thinks. So I learned how to be tolerant. I learned how to be accurate about what I was saying, because I didn't want to say anything that somebody else was going to come back and recall me on. And a lot of our politicians have to understand that and stop speaking before they think. Because when they do that, somebody comes back and recall them. Now, you said so-and-so. I was thinking about that this morning. I said, why do we? I know what it is. We get excited. And once we get excited, we lose who we really are, And our tongue takes over and begin to say things that we wouldn't otherwise say. So we have to control ourselves. That's what I started doing. I wouldn't even say nothing. People say, Curlee, what you think about so and so? I say, for right now, I'm still thinking on it.
All right. I
I'm
like that.
still
So
thinking on that.
that's a powerful
Yes.
tool, the tool to listen,
Listen.
to hear what is being said and hear what is not being said,
It's true.
to evaluate what you're listening to have the power not to comment or speak or have an emotional reaction to everything that is said and or done.
True.
Those are very powerful traits. You talked about men raising boys, men directing or redirecting men. You said something that was very key, and for those who will listen to us later on, I want them to hear this. You had men who had status that qualified you all at the time that you needed some help and to be qualified.
That's true. That's true.
That was very powerful.
That was
That
true.
somebody was willing to be uncomfortable for you guys to be comfortable. That was amazing. And we need to have more of that in our community, which means they were watching, listening to who you all were and what you were doing. And thank the Lord for that colonel, wherever he is, that was able to say that these young men did not do
That's right.
what they had been accused of
That's right.
doing.
That's right.
That is valuable. I hope it was a court reporter there. And
Yeah.
if it was, you need to grab that record so it could also be in the record that you have to pass along as people talk about the stories and talk about what was going on during those times and during that era, so that they could have the record straight and accurate.
I want to make sure that I mention one other thing here is that right now we have other leaders out there, other young black leaders out there that done walk through hell and are trying to do some of the same things that we was doing then. They're organizing. You can't see it because they're underground and they're organizing. I had some young folks come to me and say, Mr. Reed, how did you change? I said, well, first of all, I wanted to. I say, God will give you what God gave me. All you got to do is ask for it. They're like, huh? I said, that's all. Sometimes it happens overnight, and sometimes it takes a little journey. I say, but you all are on the right track. Even those that's been accused of doing this, that, and the other. We don't ever want to cut it loose on our young folks. We want to keep them in prayer always. Assist them ever how we can assist them. And we have to stop being afraid of our children.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once we stop being afraid of our children and get out there to assist them and help them, show them what's the right way, what's wrong, how to correct themselves, we'll be okay.
That is exactly right. And so you mentioned earlier a little earlier, Congressman Danny Davis. And so Congressman Davis, back in that day, was on the west side of Chicago, has always been in the west side of Chicago. I think I remember him saying he came to the west side of Chicago, he came to Chicago in 1961. And has been a member of the West Side community for a really long time, but who still finds himself advocating, educating, fighting for those things that matter then, and he's still carrying that torch today. And his reentry program describes to me some of what you just talked about in terms of not throwing human life away. Them having an opportunity to be redeemed, to come back into society, to grow and to develop, to become leaders of the community. And something I would tell the men and women I would speak at the prisons, that you're a mentor. Either a child will follow you in a positive way, your positive work, or they'll follow your negative work. But
True
you
that.
are a mentor.
That's true.
It's just which one, what are you putting out? And so Congressman Davis, through his Second Chance program, has allowed the opportunity for a person to come back and be recognized without the barriers that would keep them from being a full, successful member of society. Yet society itself may have not caught up with it. But through politics, as you call it, through policy, through legislation, through lawmaking, he has helped to make that possible and just got it reauthorized a bit ago. And so we wanted to recognize that in this conversation. So you were right, politics played a role, has a role. So once you went from one level, from the street level to the political level, to organize, that it's all necessary.
And that is true. Well, I remember, the Congressman, the first one I can remember, came up with the reentry program.
Yes, it was.
To help really black folks, but he said everybody was welcome if you needed some help. Mm-hmm. You got to come up out of the penitentiary. You got to get up out of the jail. So what are you going to do when you come out of there? Mm-hmm. He was one of the leading force in making sure there was something there for us to do when we came out.
That's right.
And I worked in drug treatment for many years. Mm-hmm. In fact, he sent a letter to somebody to put me on their staff to help other young folks who was coming through the drug process. And the person gave the person a letter from the congressman when he was on an airplane flying somewhere. The lady said, "I gave your letter from the congressman to the president of this company."
All right.
And no sooner as that, when she got off the plane and came back, she said, "You hired." I said, "Oh, that's my congressman. Congressman, he's powerful, you know." And we laughed about that, had a good time. And what I like about Congressman Davis, though, he's not a show out. You wouldn't even know he did a lot of these things if folks didn't say that's what he done.
That's right. That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. So as we conclude for this particular session, what is it that you would want people to walk away with from this conversation? We talked about a few things, but what is one of the things, or two or three?
Well, number one, to be courteous toward each other. Stay humble, please, because there's so many things out there to try to pull you off of what you want to do and how you want to go about business. For my young people, always look at who you're following. And if people are not doing what you think they should be doing, show them how to do it. I just want people to remember that love is a big word, and we use the word love, and sometimes I think we use it out of context. But I'm talking about love in relationship to other human beings to show them this is how it's really done. So just stay at peace. That's difficult to do, to stay at peace. Because when you're walking around on this earth out here, there's always something around you trying to pull you off of that peace. Find yourself a spiritual leader, whether it's in a church or an organization. Find somebody to assist and help you and teach you and reteach you what life is really all about. That's what I would say.
Well, with that, is not a lot left to say other than thank you for spending some time with myself and Mr. Curlee Reed Sr. I am Cherita Logan. I was your host for this last period, and I look forward to us coming back to finish this conversation. And remember, love will open up doors, tear down barriers, restore, rebuild, and revive you and our community. We love you, and have a good night.